What I've experienced in my life is that I've seen things no one else has.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Atheist Vanguard. I'm Derek Hawke.
I'm Rachel Watson.
I'm Jim Barrows.
All right, let's jump into today's interview.
My name is Shane Isgreg. I'm here with the Atheist Vanguard. What was your name, sir?
Daniel.
Daniel? Good to meet you, man. So we're out here interviewing people about, gods they believe in, stuff like that. You said it was a god that you believe in?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
Is this a religious god, a specific one that has a name or anything?
Yeah, this God, Christianity.
Christianity? Okay, so Yahweh. Okay, awesome. Is there anything that's happened in your life that has confirmed the existence of Yahweh to you?
To me, what I've experienced in my life is that I've seen things no one else has. I see that things that I prayed for have been answered.
Right.
But like let's say I had bad relationship issues.
Okay.
With certain people. I prayed about it, and then I had encountered some of these friends of mine and realized that, you know what, God, you're right. I prayed about it, I should cut them off.
Okay.
But I've gone through things in my life where I couldn't really explain anything.
Right. Okay, so it sounds like you have examples of prayers being answered. You talked about relationship issues, right?
Yeah, relationship issues, people.
Okay, so what happens is there are relationship issues, you pray to God, you ask Him to help you relieve some of the issues, and after praying, they've been relieved. Okay. How would you know if these issues were relieved and it wasn't the work of Yahweh?
That it's by my own doing.
That it's by your own doing?
Yeah.
No, I mean, how would
But
you be able to differentiate if He did answer your prayer or if it just got better without Him doing it?
Let's say I cut that person off.
Okay.
And I've been praying about it, and I don't want to have any contact with them at all, period.
Okay.
But there are certain situations that bring me back into their lives, and I bump into them randomly.
Okay.
Like
So,
just out of nowhere, like I don't go near you at all.
right. So it sounds to me like you're not very sure why some of these people are coming back or something like that. And you're basically saying that since you're not very sure, this convinces you that it's God sending them. Why not Vishnu, Krishna, any of these other gods? Because people believe in hundreds of thousands of gods. They usually attribute prayers being answered. How do you know that this isn't Krishna maybe answering a prayer?
Well, that's true. I really don't know.
All right.
That I do not know.
That sounds pretty honest. Where would you say on a scale from 0 to 100, 100 being I know that it's Yahweh, 0 being I don't know for sure? Which God?
On a different subject,
Okay.
but okay, you're atheist, right?
Correct.
You don't believe in spirituality, nothing, no spiritual, no angels, demons.
Right, I don't have any examples yet, so no, I don't believe.
No. So how is it that you don't believe, and you say that spiritual things don't happen? Then why should it acknowledge you if you don't believe? If you believe, then it acknowledges you, then it's there.
Right, well, so I don't believe in any of these things because I don't have any examples of them happening. I have examples of claims, and when I ask people about the claims, they go in depth with their claim, but I haven't seen any evidence, so I'm, as of right now, lacking a reason to believe in a God or anything supernatural. My stance is not that I know there isn't a God or anything supernatural, just that I'm left without a reason to believe as of now.
Let's say that one day I came over here to the Riverwalk, and I came down the escalator. A man, an older black gentleman, came up to me and shook my hand like he knew me. And something told me, and I was walking with him down the street.
Mm-hmm.
How do you explain to me that I tell him that I'm a good man? He says, oh, I know you are.
If the man thinks that you're a good man?
Yeah. So I go down the street, and he asked for $5 for some change to get himself some food. So I told him no. He said, okay, keep it. How do you explain that when I walk around the corner and there's nowhere else to turn, and that person disappears?
Well, I could come up with a few explanations, but I want to get onto the question of if I don't have an explanation of how something happens, is that a good reason to believe that therefore it must have been a God, or do you think maybe I'm just left without an answer?
Well, I believe that it was God because I couldn't really explain it.
Right. So how do you think if this wasn't God doing it, do you think you'd be able to tell the difference, or do you think if there wasn't a God, it would basically look the same as if there is one?
Wow, you got some valid. My mind hasn't gone there. Okay, yeah. But that I really am unsure of, because if it really is a spiritual sense of something happening, or is it just something, coincidence? I could have looked back, the person could have turned somewhere.
Right.
And I couldn't really see.
Okay. Yeah, we don't know. My final question would be, do you think that there's anything that could occur that would make your confidence go down in this a little bit? Maybe not all the way, but just a little less confident. Anything you can think of, or probably not?
No, I'll still believe no matter what, because everyone has their own opinion. Everyone has their own free will of thought and their choice to believe or not to believe.
Correct. I agree with that,
But
man.
we'll answer that as we pass on anyways.
Yep.
Even if there is or is not a God.
Right.
But God gave us a freedom of will.
Okay.
So if you don't want to believe him, you have that choice.
All right, man. Well, it was good talking to you. Thank you so much for the interview. Hope to see you around later.
I believe that we do need that for our society, because people are so brainwashed by media.
Yeah.
By media, by some music, by Facebook, by people, by believing whatever they else believes, but not searching within themselves what is the truth.
I agree with that part more than anything. I think people should look to themselves for truth more than anything else, and not just confirmation in opinions they already have and stuff like that. So I think it seems like there are definitely a good number of things we've agreed on so far, and it's good to learn something new every day, you know what I mean? We're out here once a month. Hopefully we'll see you again.
Yeah.
All right, man. Take care.
Yeah.
All righty. Jim, I want to start with you. I want to go jump to the end of the interview when he talks about free will and our freedom of will to believe or not believe.
Well, I think we can tie in the beginning of the interview as well, where he says, seen things others haven't seen. And that end point. I think this is a problem that a lot of Christians make, is that when you say belief, faith, and opinion, belief and faith are more often conflated together as being the same thing. And we as atheists kind of draw a distinction between the two, right? Belief, we need evidence for to say we believe in something, and faith, we don't. But then they'll also say, well, that's just your opinion when we talk about things we have evidence for.
Yeah.
And so in that way, opinion's less equated, I think, by many Christians, even though it's sort of final defensive mechanism for saying, for realizing that when you back them into a corner, well, that's just all your opinion.
Right. He kind of confused me at the beginning, because he talks about, I've seen things that no one else has seen. And the example he gives, well, I prayed for something and it came true. Well, I can see that.
Well, you can see that, and I think that's the problem, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it was weirder than that, actually, because he says he's seen stuff that no one else has, mentions that answered prayer, but then the way he tells the story was what got it for me, is because he goes through and says,
He cut people off.
that he had some bad relationships, so he prayed, and then he realized himself that he should agree with God and cut these off.
Yeah.
Right.
It sounds like he made this decision on his own and is, throwing the seasoning of God in there to...
We've had this discussion about giving glory to God for things that really has nothing involved with, whether it be identifying bad relationships or bad friendships, or to the doctor who stands 6 or 12 hours, operating on you.
Right. And I think, too, the see things no one else has is a point that people forget about science, is that, you create an experiment and then you go through it and then you publish it. Not to say, hey, this is right, but to say, did I do it right? Right. So that other people can then go and do the exact same experiment. And if they get the same results, then they know they're onto something. But if they don't get the same results, they got to take the experiment apart and see where that error
Right.
factor.
They also have
crept
to add in the falsifying. It has to work in these conditions only, and if these other conditions work, then your premises is false or
Right.
faulty.
Yeah, you have to look at the false side
Yeah.
of it. Otherwise, we could prove today that Santa Claus exists. There's a number of things that Christians do on a regular basis that we could use
Right.
to prove Santa Claus exists, and yet nobody puts a camera on the cookies and the chimney.
Right.
And that's all you have to do to disprove it, right?
Right.
And it seems to be a lot with all these claims is we don't see them exploring the falsifying portion of it. It's always God did it. God did it. God did it. And then actually it seems sometimes that if they even attempt to explore those other things, it's a form of blasphemy or their faith is not strong enough.
Right.
Right.
It's the way I view it now outside of religion is that it, as Hitchens said, that's how religion kind of poisons everything. So with Santa as an example, a kid wakes up, sees toys and presents and under the Christmas tree, they equate that to Santa came down the chimney because that's what we've
Right.
primed them to believe, essentially. But then, he gives an example of a perceived homeless gentleman coming up and asking for money. And then he goes on to, that's God that did that.
Right.
And it's, what you're
Well,
saying.
it's God because the guy disappeared and he had no explanation for it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is that if it's something supernatural in that regard, they're like, oh, it's God. But in the case of Easter Bunny
Right.
drops
So let me
eggs.
give you an example. Let me give you an example. So as you're facing Jim right now, what if I took this and put it over here? Would you immediately think God did it?
No, I would immediately think you did it because this would be the second time that's happened.
Right.
No.
But also with,
Yeah,
with,
it's
with religion poison and everything, continue with your example with Santa Claus, you have two kids. They both want an Xbox. Excuse me. One kid who wants the Xbox, they live next door. His dad got laid off in November, couldn't afford the Xbox. What does that do to his mind?
I know.
That he couldn't get the Xbox. They both went to Santa Claus and they did it. And to bring it back to Christianity, you have two people both praying to get food. One gets food, one doesn't because they're
Right.
both homeless and can't afford food. What does that do to the person whose prayer didn't get answered?
Yeah.
I mean, what does that do to their mind? It poisons it.
It does, yeah. Well, I mean, then of course it's justified as, oh, well, I got laid off, so I couldn't buy it for you. And it's like, well, then why couldn't, whatever. And
Right. Why couldn't the mystic Santa
why
Claus?
couldn't Mystic Santa Claus? And then if you're going to boil it down specifically to the religion, it's like, even if we believe that there's no Santa, but we do believe in God, God knows that you got laid off and couldn't afford toys. Why didn't God provide for you in that regard?
Right.
But then we're back to the...
But going back to the free will topic, one question I've always had, so in the Christian religion, you have a God who's omnipresent, omniscient, who knows how many hairs are on your head, knows what's going to happen. How does free will play into that? Whereas if he has a divine plan laid out, is he going to deviate from that divine plan because you pray for something? Or is that prayer part of that divine plan? Like he know that you would have this need and you pray for it? Or does he change it? How does that work?
That's a good question because it would seem that cruelty is, in this case, defining cruelty as the kid who can't get food, bone cancer in children, the parasite that eats people's eyes, all these things that happen that are cause misery and suffering.
Right.
If that's all part of God's plan, and He is omnipotent, and He is omniscient, He is all these omni things, then why is cruelty part of what this God needs?
Right.
And that's really the question you're asking is why does God need cruelty in the world? If He's omnipotent, if He can do anything, there is no reason for His plan to have
True.
cruelty.
I mean, even in the Bible, he says it itself. I think it's Isaiah 7, where God is responsible for everything good and evil.
Right, yeah. And that's the question is I think that as a Christian, you have to ask yourself at some point, if you're thinking critically at all, is why is this cruelty necessary? Why is this pain necessary?
That's why in their religion it's so ingrained that to question is wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
To doubt is one of the is a unforgivable sin for most part. If you deny me, and that includes questioning. If you question me, your internal soul is at risk.
Yeah.
Right.
No, for sure. But interesting with the freedom of thought thing, because the freedom of choice, free will. I thought the same thing, and it's the critical thinking part. You don't, it's like when that question crops up, it's like what answers it in that moment,
Right.
to make it go away, essentially. Because you would say that, and they're just like, oh, it's free will, and then you delve into free will and God's plan, and then it all comes apart. Then you start thinking, if God is planning for me to be an atheist and then switch back to Christianity later for whatever reason, to bring everybody to Christianity, whatever the case may be, should I pray about it? If it's just going to happen, should I just close my eyes and live life like it is, or
Right.
all prayers?
There's a really wonderful discussion about free will, and it starts off with, did Satan have free will? Mm-hmm. And in regards to why God doesn't reveal himself, well, he doesn't reveal himself because he gave us free will to choose. Right. And of course you bring in, well, Satan had free will. He knows, he's been in the presence of God. He's spoken to God. Then God revealed himself. So what's the difference between him revealing himself to Satan, who has free will, he chose to rebel, blah, 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 and revealing it to us?
Right. And that's, I think that's the question is where do the angels fit into all this, right? Do they actually have free will? And is it because they were designed to not have free will, or is it because they've seen God and therefore have no choice? Which would bring up your question about Satan then, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. And the ever-present question of why was a vision, or why did Saul get a Damascus road but I didn't, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That it goes back to Santa Claus and religion.
Yeah, I mean, it really does boil into all of it, because once you start thinking about it, that's why you're told not to think. Questioning is, the one unforgivable sin, like I've said before, is, you can't question this. You can't.
What about the other question is like, so when you do get to heaven, do you still have free will? Because it sounds like that you need to surrender your free will to live in this state of bliss.
Yeah. And
Because you're literally commanded, you will not feel sadness or pain. I had a friend way back when he was extremely religious, and I asked this question. I asked the same question. I was like, "Well, so I know you're very close with your son. What if your son chose not to believe? He chose to reject your religion and your God, and he is burning in hell while you're in heaven. Are you going to tell me that you're not mourning or feeling a sense of loss and despair because your flesh and blood, your only child, is suffering and damnation?" And he said, well, when I get to heaven, God will remove all memory of him from me.
Which is just
And I'm like, you're okay with that?
Well,
Yeah,
and then you're no longer you, because we are the summation of our memories.
right.
Correct.
But you're talking about, free will and slaves, and that I was watching Rome last night, and
Is that an HBO series?
yeah, the HBO series.
Fantastic.
It is a fantastic series, but you have General Pompey, who this is at the point where the Senate has left Rome, leaving Caesar in charge. And Pompey is wrestling with, do I go back to Rome and face Caesar, or do I run? What do I fight? What do I do? What do I do? And he's standing on the shore, and there's a slave kind of off in the back shot. He goes, how easy it is to be a slave, to just kind of go along and not make any decisions and not have any choice in what happens to you.
Right.
And that really is what a slave is. They don't have any choices. Some of them, they gain their master's trust, may have a couple of more choices than
Privileges.
not choices. What kind of food are you going to get? Right? It's not an itemized list. It's, oh, hey, go get me. We need lunch. Go get some lunch. Okay, they'll go and because they know what their master wants at that point, and they can go get that. Right. But it's not the laundry list. So even the choices they have are still limited. And that's not freedom. That's not agency.
No, not at all. Yeah,
that's not any of the things that we
taken the human out of the human. The
right.
human
I've heard
part
Christians.
out of the human.
I've heard Christians refer to themselves as slaves of Christ.
Yeah,
yeah,
and they're grateful of their chains.
yeah,
yeah.
I watched a video recently talking about slavery. And, not necessarily slavery, but you questioned a second ago, like, what are you just go to heaven and then you serve God all the time? And they were talking about angels and different levels of angels and stuff like that. And he mentioned that there was a level of angels, I guess, that literally stood at the throne all day, and they didn't move except for bowing. They just bowed all day long. Yeah. And the concept of time doesn't quite work in heaven because
Yeah. Well,
eternity.
yeah. And what kind of person needs that kind of
Right.
worship all the time? What does that say about your ego? We know he's a jealous God who loves, but love is not jealous.
Right. And then, I mean, this was coming from a believer. So my initial reaction was, if I can't choose what I'm going to do in heaven, I don't want to go, but just on the off chance that I'm going to have to stand around for literally all of eternity, not moving and just going.
Yeah. That's, or even just
You are
worshiping.
so great,
Yeah.
I don't, any
Yeah,
being
the
of worship
Pastafarian,
that-
the Pastafarian heaven is much better. With beer volcanoes and strippers of the appropriate gender.
Right? I'll take strippers of any gender, all genders. Bring them in.
You're offending my virginity, I heard.
You're
We don't want to go there. Yeah.
right.
Again.
So there was something I would like to bring up in regards to this. Shane goes on to, kind of ask him about the certainty question, like how certain are you, essentially? Puts it on a scale of 1 to 100. He did not seem to want to answer that, and he moved on to really a statement that made me really pause and think about it. Because he basically says, like, on a different subject, you're an atheist, you don't believe in supernatural stuff, spiritual
Right.
stuff, and all that. Why should this deity or whatever even acknowledge you?
Yeah.
Like you're an ant.
So here's what he said. He says, "So you're an atheist. How do you not believe when the spiritual acknowledges you?"
Right.
What the hell did that mean?
That's the whole thing. And
How do you know if the spiritual is acknowledging you or not?
Right. And that's where I think we need to start defining terms and what do you mean by spiritual.
Yeah.
In my experience, whenever I try to get someone to define spiritual is, we end up with word salad that means nothing.
Yeah.
Or we never really get to a definition.
It's always
that works.
vagaries. Yeah. It's
Right.
always that.
So
nebulous
I'd like to
terms.
share a spiritual experience that I've had. I had.
Okay.
A few years back, about 10 years back, I had LASIX.
Okay.
So all my life, I've worn glasses, I've worn contacts. When I had the LASIX, right after the surgery, it's like you're in this steam room. It's just everything's blurry. You're literally blind, and they give you a couple of Valium during the procedure. And when you wake up, everything is vibrant, crystal clear. I mean, it's like going from a regular television to HD. To me, that was a spiritual experience, something I'll never forget. I will remember that ever for the rest of my life. That moment when I opened my eyes.
Right.
How do you define spiritual in that regard?
That's how. To me, it was a spiritual. It surpassed. It was a heightened emotions and just a feeling that was of elation.
Right. I get the nebulous part of it.
It had nothing to do with divinity.
I know,
or
sure,
anything.
or supernatural or
Right.
anything. It's a completely natural process. But yeah, that's
It tapped
supernatural.
into feelings that I'm normally not used to of a heightened level.
Oh yeah.
Right.
No,
and
for sure.
even Sam Harris refers to spiritual things from his meditation and some of his LSD and hallucinogenic stuff as well. He's also a neuroscientist. So
Sure.
and he's probably the one person I know that is probably to a fault avoiding the word spiritual, and even he can't for some of these experiences.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that
it's just
doesn't
a
mean that we
part of
have
culture.
good definitions no matter what.
No.
We
I
don't.
think that's what it is we don't have a better word for it.
We don't. Yeah.
Like people that I have close relationships, closer. I still refer to them as soulmates. Not as I
Right.
believe in a soul, but it's a way to define it. I'm close with this person, but I'm closer with this
right.
person.
Well, I mean, it's co-opted language.
Yeah.
Right.
Where it's people that are like, oh, I'm atheist. Don't say Jesus Christ or goddamn or whatever. I still say those daily.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not
the
going
Lord's
to
name in
not
vain.
say it. I try not to do like the bless you. I try to say gesundheit.
Which is the same, I think.
It-
I don't
yeah,
speak
it's like
German, though.
German. It's something like good health. It's
Right.
like you kind of like you wish upon good health as opposed to.
I still say bless you because I'm an instigator.
I don't know. Maybe you're a paladin and you're used to
A what?
blessing a paladin and Dungeons
Paladin?
and Dragons, and then you had blessed Jim with divine aura or.
Yeah, apparently he's never played D&D, so that's just completely lost on.
I mean, I've never played D&D, but I've played D&D derivatives essentially.
Isn't that like a Jedi learner?
No.
No,
Okay. Wrong franchise.
But going back to the subject here, he goes on to say that, why should it acknowledge you? And then he says, if you believe, it will acknowledge you and it will be there. So it's again that same concept of that you have to believe first before this thing acknowledges you.
It's almost,
believe in undefined terms. That's
right. He's almost saying, to the way I interpret that, he's saying that once you believe, you'll start interpreting everything that you can explain in those terms, and therefore it's there for you.
Right.
And that's kind of that fundamental problem, which again goes back to that word belief and faith and opinion being all kind of commingled in many believers' brains, at the very least, belief and faith being commingled, which is why I'm uncomfortable saying I don't believe in God, because that means they don't interpret that the same way I do.
Right, exactly. They see that as a positive claim that there is no God or whatnot, which, can argue all day long if you'd like, but it's a very big misconception,
Yeah. And two, I mean, we haven't talked too much about his apparent inability to tell a story from beginning to end in a way that can be followed. And that's really not what we're trying to do, is pick on that, because not everybody that we walk up to on the street for these interviews is prepared for that.
Right.
Which is why we try to dig deeper into what they believe. And
I would probably be the same way.
You see a common theme in how they relay these stories. It's just this jumble of just non-related examples of undefined terms, and it's really hard to kind of I can sit here all day thinking what in the world did he just say?
Yeah. Well, I think it's that that concept of whatever answers that question now, but if you string all those together, it's just a big jumbled mess. Yeah, it doesn't quite work.
Reminds me of somebody's tweets.
Yeah. 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Right.
Then he goes on to
demonetized.
We've been trying to work on that. What happens if we sing demonetized? Do we get demonetized?
I don't know.
I've been told I can't sing on the shows anymore. So.
Yeah, I think that's just because you can't sing. No,
it's not that you can't, as in you're forbidden.
I'm forbidden.
It's that you can't sing.
And it's not from our producers, it's actually from our commenters and viewers.
Thank you, commenters. Thank you very much.
We appreciate
We
that
very
greatly.
much appreciate that.
So
you're welcome.
But how do you explain you go to the Riverwalk and somebody asks you for money and you say that you're a good person and they say yes?
And then you don't give them money.
So
that's the Riverwalk, Phantom. And tune into our.
I've actually experienced this in Phantom. I think
this idea of kindness to a stranger,
right,
not only exists in Christianity, but you also see it in the Norse mythology, where Odin has been known to visit people. And if he's not given guest right and proper courtesy as a stranger, he visits all kind of nasty stuff on them. So you should always be kind to a stranger is the method.
And you see that common theme also like in the Grimm fairy tales.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, be nice to strangers because you never know who they are or what they're going to do to you.
Right.
And also be nice to them because you don't know what kind of rewards you'll receive as well.
Right, because you don't know who they are. Yeah. And so that's kind of a common theme to a lot of stuff. And that to me was just another example of be kind to strangers because you never know.
Yeah. Right.
Going back to the storytelling. So we have somebody. So how do you explain running into a man, a black man, running into a man who says that you're a good man, which to me, I can say that to anybody right now. And then he asked me for $5 of food, and I say no, and then he disappears.
Yeah.
Well, no, he gave him the $5.
No, he said no.
No, he didn't.
Well, he said $5, and then he said some change. But he said no, and then apparently the homeless guy told him, well, then keep it. And
keep the change, because he asked for money for food. He gave him $5.
No, he didn't give him $5.
I don't think he gave him any money. I'm not sure.
He said no.
The story was a little disjointed, but
right.
But the fact is that he disappeared.
Yeah, but I actually had an experience like that. My dad lives in San Antonio, and we go to the Riverwalk. I may have run into God in San Antonio, and then now I have to question why God would be in San Antonio. Austin is so much better.
Right.
But no, literally, there's some homeless people that hang around there, tourists did you try to steal my mug again?
It was an accident.
It wasn't a bit this time, but literally I did that. I was walking down on the river walk, the lower section there, and then I saw that, Jim, and it was an older gentleman of color that came up and asked for money. I don't have any cash. I very rarely carry cash.
Yeah.
So that was a problem. But literally same thing. I was like, oh, no, sorry. And, kind of kept walking. And as, I turned around to look for the restaurant or wherever I was going, I was like, holy crap, that dude's gone.
Yeah.
And, I couldn't explain it, but nowhere in my brain would have went, therefore God, or therefore supernatural.
It reminds me of it was a spoof of horror movies, and the girl is sitting in class like this, and she looks up and she sees a killer standing there, and she looks around there, and as she does this, he runs behind the tree and hides.
Oh yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, that's really all it is. Because I figured when I look back, I was like, at first you're taken aback. You're like, whoa, that guy disappeared. But then rationality kicks in, and then you're maybe he scaled the wall.
Right.
Maybe
There's an optic trick you can do.
Sure.
That if you've got the wall here, and as you walk past it, you slowly but surely walk behind it. You don't take an immediate 90-degree turn, and then you eventually just disappear from sight because you've taken long enough for the building or whatever it is you're using to obscure, and just walk behind it. There's a number of optic tricks you can do to make yourself or someone else disappear. We could ask, magicians have a number of ways to do it. It's like it's not that big a deal to do that.
For sure. But that's that sloppy thinking where, XYZ happens. I'm attributing a God to it because of my beliefs.
What really astounds me also is that he was putting so much significance on this example.
Right.
There's really nothing there.
There was nothing there to the example, but the kicker was that, really it boils down to is how do you explain that?
Yeah.
And I get that all the time from people that I deal with on a daily basis about
the
belief.
real question is, how do you attribute something supernatural to something as bland as that?
Exactly.
Right.
And other stuff is, and it's just the sloppy thinking, really, because I had a friend recently recount a story to me, which is essentially what it was, a story, and then be like, well, you can't explain that. And it's like, well, I probably could. You could give me an option to try to, but regardless of all of that, if I can't explain it, then it's unexplainable.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not, I can't explain it, therefore the godless bitches mugs, did it.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing for me when I was figuring out that I was atheist was becoming comfortable with those 4 famous words, I do not know. Yeah. Or if you use the contraction, I don't know. Right. And that is, I think, the hardest thing for Christians because they believe they have capital T truth.
Yeah.
And most atheists that I know don't make that claim. We don't have capital T truth. We don't have the truth. We have a lot of things that appear to be true, but we're not sure.
Yeah. Well, and they'll try to saddle us with that burden of proof, too, is they'll say, like, well, then, if you're not certain about anything, how are you making a belief in anything? And it's, it's just a...
I accept the things that are true. There's a number of things that I accept as true. I accept as true that the sun will come out tomorrow, will come up. The sun will go down. That doesn't mean that we revolve around the sun or that the sun revolves around us. We revolve around it. Right. There are a number of things that I just accept as true because I don't have any reason not to at the moment, and they don't have huge impacts on my life.
They don't have huge impact. And the other thing, too, is that we're discounting all of the evidence of the sun rising.
Right.
There has never been a time where the sun hasn't risen, and then you have to define that risen isn't, it's not actually rising over the earth.
Right.
Ra's not carrying it in a chariot of fire.
Yeah, and if the Greeks could figure this stuff out, and other cultures could figure this stuff out with, such little understanding of the real world, why can't we? I mean, we put stuff into space. They didn't even have that luxury, right?
We didn't run into any firmament.
But there's nothing, no firmament. It's above us. It's still...
It's holding the water.
Right. Anyway. It's above the solar system because we've gotten discovery outside of the solar system, so maybe it has going to run into the firmament.
So we're almost at the end of the show.
Yeah.
I want to do one last thing. Does anybody have any comments before we wrap up?
No, but I think we do have comments to read.
Do you have comments?
Ooh.
You read my mind.
Oh,
We got this ESPN thing going on.
ESPN.
We like to give before we go, we like to give a quick shout out to some of our commenters and discuss some of the comments that we received. So I am going to read from our video Dark Spirits from viewer Ungertron. This is a good one. Atheism is a lie. Science inadvertently proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the true all-natural creator and ruler of the cosmos, God, is what scientists call the laws of nature and the forces of physics. Atheists insanely prefer God to be some obsolete supernatural woohoo out of books like the Bible. Then even more insanely, atheists believe that because they were wrong about the identity and nature of God means that the laws of nature and forces of physics, aka God, doesn't exist.
Okay.
Would you like to do a synchronized face palming?
Yeah, synchronized. On
Yeah.
three.
One, two, three.
Oh.
Golly, there's such
Yeah.
stuff with
so let's be clear. Atheism, at the base definition, is we do not accept as true the claim that there are
Right.
one or more gods. Period. End of conversation.
Right. So I'm claiming, putting on my theist hat, I'm claiming there's a God. Do you believe me?
No.
Okay, then.
I don't believe
atheism
there
a
isn't
lie?
a God,
Yeah.
but I don't accept your claim as true. Either
Right.
claim there is a God.
So keep your Christian hat on, and I say, do you believe in Vishnu?
I don't know because it doesn't fit my.
You're a Christian.
Yeah, I'm a Christian hat, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Or
You're going to say no. God, your God is a true God.
the
Therefore, you're an
one and
atheist
only
when it
God.
when you
Yeah, but that's not
Right.
how they look
But
at it either.
when he says that science has inadvertently proven, he's completely missing the point because
Mm-hmm.
science is not prescriptive. It's not saying that
Right.
this is the way it works. This is why it works. It's describing how we think it works,
Right.
not being prescriptive about this is the way it is, which is what you normally would get with a God. God created the universe because that's the way he wanted it. That's prescriptive.
Yeah.
And science is trying to describe how the world works. So it makes no claim as to why it does what it does. It just describes how and what it does and where it does it. It doesn't get into the why question.
Yeah.
And
But they see it as, these scientists on high declaring, like writing on the tablet that, evolution is true and, that affects their belief. So they see this as this declarative body of
he's trying to get
scientists.
this wordplay that God is really the laws of nature and the forces of physics, and therefore, if we don't believe in God, then therefore we don't believe in the forces of physics and the laws of nature. This kind of weird.
And
little-
he's got
Yeah.
a burden, he definitely has a burden of proof in there where he's got to prove that
Right.
science is that how we describe what we see around us,
Yeah.
science, the laws of physics, etc., is a conscious, omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent entity when rocks fall on children.
Right.
That's not omnibenevolent.
Did the forces of nature send his only begotten son?
Yeah, there's that whole.
No, the laws of physics sent his only begotten son.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Not
either.
quite?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't either.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, even his
'Cause
first
he's-
statement.
the laws of nature, the powers of physics, those are unconscious things. Those are natural forces,
Right.
Which is far from what God is believed to be, or taught, or even
Right.
Yeah.
And to the how do I want to put this? As an atheist, they're also making a categorical error because atheism is not opposed by Christianity. Atheism and
Right.
theism are the two questions, which is why I
Right.
say we do not accept the claim one or more gods.
Right.
Because under theism, you now break it down into poly and mono.
Right.
Polytheism, we know most of the pantheons that are there. Monotheism, as far as I know, it's the Abrahamic. But you have Jewish, Islam, and Christianity as kind of the big three. There are probably more that I don't know about. And then even when we start digging into Christianity, right, you've got Catholicism and Protestantism. And there's a third category for other, because I don't know how else to categorize them.
Right.
And before you start getting down into a worldview, monotheism, we can't even consider a worldview, much less
Right.
the theism that is there. And I have no idea what you just wrote. But yeah, there's some category errors too that creationists make.
Yeah,
So-
no, for sure.
or not creationists, but theists make.
Theists in general,
Yeah.
because they equate theism to their religion that they subscribe to, and they
Right.
don't think of it as a dichotomy of belief in A and disbelief in A. They
Right.
see it as I believe in A, and you're saying A is not real. Is how they're looking at it.
Yeah, and we're not.
We're not, yeah, not at all.
Now there are atheists who do. Let's be clear. There are atheists that
For sure.
do.
And they carry a burden of proof that they need to justify if called on it.
Right.
Check out the brain on you.
Oh,
Proud of you.
well, thank you.
Alrighty. Anything else before we wrap up?
Nope.
Atheism is a lie carries a burden of proof too.
There you go.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I'm done.
All right, continue the conversation in the comments. Please like and subscribe. We enjoy hearing from you and commenting back. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.